Good evening. Sorry about the technical difficulties. I'd like to call to order the City Council meeting of Monday, April 1st, 2019. And we will start the meeting off with a prayer by Reverend Tom Emanuel from the United Church of Christ.
All right. Well, I would invite you to pray with me in whatever way is most comfortable for you. Creator God, we thank you for this opportunity to come together and to do the work of this community. We are grateful for changing seasons and melting snow, and we are also aware that with changes in seasons come new difficulties, floods, and we keep in mind those who are struggling to recover from weather events and from other events in their lives tonight. Help us to act with wisdom and with courage, with insight and with compassion to help create a Watertown that meets the needs of all of its citizens. In your many names we pray this night, O Creator God. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Okay. Albertson?
Here.
Bueller?
Here.
Danforth?
Here.
Lallam?
Here.
Manti?
Here.
Roby?
Here.
Solom?
Here.
Thorson?
Here.
Bill Howard?
Here.
Y?
Present.
Thank you.
Beth Manti is participating telephonically, so you'll hear her voice, and I'll try to remember to give her enough time to vote.
That'll be good.
The first item on the agenda is approval of the consent agenda. Is there a motion for approval? Moved by Bueller. Second by Lallam. Any discussion? Councilman Y?
On those, so that's $37,000. You look at two of those, and they're pretty good amounts. One's for $17,000, one's for $19,000. Do we send those then to a collection agency, or
Yes.
where do we go?
Yes. That's where it goes when we send them.
And is that the final from Aerodynamics, or is there more outstanding that they owe us? That's everything.
That'd be it. Did you have something, Councilman Danforth?
On that same topic, Kristen, who is what is it called?
First Division,
One Vision. Is that, who is that? That's not any part of the airline, correct?
No, they're not related. That's the previous, that's our previous FBO operator.
Oh,
Now it's ATY Aviation. Previously it was One Vision.
okay, all right. Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item number 2 is public comment. If anyone is here that wants to speak, now is your chance. Please come forward. Yes,
Mayor.
please state your name
Mayor,
for the record. Oh, excuse me.
I'm not positive, but I'm guessing he may want to speak to an agenda item, so I'm not sure if you want to wait until an
Well, I
agenda.
thought I had to speak now. Can we wait till that
You,
point?
you can, if you have something that you want to talk about during one of our agenda items, I will allow you to speak at that time.
Okay, I'll wait till then.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else? See none, we'll move on. Item 3 is approval of the agenda. Is there a motion and second for approval? Moved by Vilhauer,
Second.
second by Y. Any discussion? Anybody? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries.
I probably should have spoke up then. I'll be recusing myself from items 4 and 5.
And that's fine. Item number 4 is application for a transfer of ownership of a retail on-off sale malt beverage and South Dakota farm wine and video lottery license from J. Amby 6 LLC, doing business as Freedom Value Center, inactive, 615 9th Avenue Southeast, to iMart Stores LLC, doing business as iMart Stores USA, inactive, at the same location. I'll look for a motion second for approval. Moved by Bueller, second by Thorson. And I will open the public hearing. Is there anyone that would like to speak about this? Please come forward. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and look for council action. Or is there any discussion by the council or questions? All right, I'll look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item number 5 is approval of resolution number 19-17, resetting the on-sale alcoholic beverage license fee for full-service restaurants. And I'll look for a motion and a second for approval, just to get started here. Moved by Danforth, second by Vilhauer. And sir, I know you had something, so this would be your time, but first I'll let the city attorney do a little introduction then. Yes, Councilman.
I will be recusing myself from this one.
Okay, Councilman Solom has recused himself.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So this is the item, we have discussed this at the last couple of committee meetings prior to the last 2 council meetings. In 2008, the legislature passed a law allowing communities to offer a new type of license. It's an on-sale license for full-service restaurants. At the time, they required that the first 10 years that license be sold at the current fair market value, essentially, and they offered a way to calculate that. For the last 10 years, that license fee was set at $205,000, and that 10 years is now up. Now the only floor pursuant to state law is the number of people in our community at the last census, so that's $21,842. And as the council had requested last time we discussed this, this resolution was brought forward with a proposal of $100,000 consistent with Aberdeen and Brookings' current fee. And I'll take any other questions you might have.
Anybody have any questions? Councilman Danforth?
Are we under a deadline to get this done? Is there some deadline that we are under to, so?
No, no and yes. The previous resolution, when it was passed in 2009, did have an end date on it. But if somebody comes in today and asks for a license, it's $205,000. But we should do it sooner rather than later. If anything, just resetting it to 205 without an end date, if that's what we want it to be.
Okay, but we wouldn't be, I mean, if it was put off for a couple weeks or a month, it wouldn't be the end of the world at this point.
Nothing that I'm aware of would make that something we couldn't consider doing.
So this license that we can sell for $205,000 doesn't come with the same privileges. If someone were to buy this type of license, I understand they would have to keep track of their food and alcohol sales and prove that their food makes up 60% and non-alcoholic beverages make up 60% of their total sales, correct?
Correct, Mayor. Yes, thank you. I should have touched on that in my introduction, but yes, so the differentiation between this fee and the regular on-sale license is that these license holders must prove to us every year that over 60% of their revenue is derived from food and non-alcoholic beverage sales.
And if they couldn't do that, would their license be revoked?
Correct.
And the holders of the regular licenses can sell 100% alcohol if they like. There is no such requirement for reporting. They don't have to report.
No, they do not.
Right. So it really isn't apples to apples. And we've sold 0 in 10 years, right? We haven't sold a single one.
Correct.
So, okay. Councilman Albertson?
Mr. Roby, would you remind me again about the video lottery part of this? Did you say that comes with it? I mean, they can apply for that separately with either license then?
That's a separate license.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Councilman Danforth?
Man, I'd like some clarification on something you just said. It's if they didn't obtain the 60% non-alcohol requirement, you said their license would be revoked. It would be revoked, or it's possibly that it would be revoked?
My understanding, the way the statute reads, is that they do not get to renew their license unless they can prove to us that they've met that threshold, so they would no longer be a license holder.
And they would have some amount of dollars invested in this, right? So how does that happen? I mean, so let's just play with the $205,000 as it is today. And let's say I don't obtain the 60% requirement, I lose my license. Does the city hold it and try to sell my license? Do I get my $205,000 back? You just lose it.
Correct. The way, I mean, so this is the legislature, when they created this, had to hurry up and amend it last year in order to allow that, because last year that 10-year period came up, and I feel like there's a couple of scenarios that have been brought to my attention, that being one of them, that the legislature may address in the future. But the way I read the law right now is that the license cannot be renewed if they do not meet the 60% threshold and they lose their license.
Then to renew their license would be another fresh $205,000 or whatever we would change it to if we change it. $100,000 is proposed. Councilman Y?
Is this, we have the ability to sell an infinite number?
Unlimited
licenses at this price?
The only caveat to that is that after one license is sold, we do need to maintain essentially a registry of those licenses that we sell. So if you buy a license and 2 years down the road, I decide I want to start a restaurant, the city has to refer me to you first. If you're willing to sell to me at the price that the city has set for that fee, then I have to buy from you. Basically, you get the first chance to sell. If you're asking more, then they can come back and buy from the city, and now there'll be 2 licenses in existence.
So, yes, Councilman Thorson.
Matt, now, does video lottery sales, does that count towards the non-alcoholic sales? Did we clarify that yet?
It does not. So the statute says food and non-alcoholic beverage license. Food and non-alcoholic beverage revenue is all that composes the 60%. Correct.
So what would be the drawback to just selling it at the very rock bottom, $21,800 or whatever, $22,000?
My suspicion is there's some people in the audience tonight that might be able to speak to those drawbacks.
That would potentially harm the value of the standard license holders is what I'm guessing that they'll say. And so that would be the drawback, and maybe they'll talk about that. The benefit would be that it would be easy to open a restaurant and be able to sell alcohol, and we could have more restaurants in town, but it wouldn't give us the right to have more bars that don't sell food. So, any other council comments or questions? Sir, do you want to come forward and state your name, please? Make sure the microphone's on. There should be a little green light.
Hello, Roger Meyer, owner of Foxy's down around the corner, and owner of liquor licenses for over 30 years in the city of Watertown. And when we talk about the value of $205,000, I think every one of us bar owners think that's probably a fair number, you know. But I'm sitting here today, looking like I'm going to get my pay cut in half. I've owned these licenses for over 30 years. I own them for an investment. I understood what they cost when I bought them, and the money I'd have to borrow to own this liquor license and to run a restaurant or a bar. And I'm looking here, sitting here in front of my council members and my peers saying, well, it sounds like a good day to lower our liquor licenses to $100,000. You know, to me, it's just a crazy, crazy idea. There's rules and regulations on these liquor licenses that have been in place forever. And it's per capita of a town, how many liquor licenses we should have. And we've played the game of county licenses coming into the city for years and years. And we've overwhelmed our city with liquor licenses. Everyone knows that's a problem. But it's happened and it's done. And to open up the can of worms of how do we devalue our licenses that way? You know, you're talking devaluing our licenses in half. And many people still owe money, probably owe 180, 190, 200,000 for their liquor licenses. And how can you devalue it to 100,000? You know, everyone wants more businesses and more things to come to Watertown. But are you going to hurt the people that are here taking care of these liquor licenses? They're not an easy thing to obtain, and they're very expensive. And just to leave it open up to the realm of liquor licenses and businesses to say I'm going to have 60% food and 40% liquor is a fallacy. What happens if they start out and they're just a great food restaurant and everything's going well and they catch on to be a place where people come and drink? And all of a sudden that number creeps over their food. And they've invested 10 years in the city of Watertown, and you're going to go back and take that license away from them? You know, those are the things that I don't think people are thinking of at all, and that we can't control. You know, the things that are controlled with the liquor licenses, control them. There's certain amounts of them. You have to get fingerprinted, background checks. You have to come in front of the city council to be approved. And that is the way I think they should be kept, you know, until we come up with a solution on how we don't devalue our liquor licenses. And that is really what I came here to say is we're just sitting here with a yes vote. You will devalue my liquor license today by 50%. And I don't know what I've done wrong that anyone would do that to us that have been in business for multiple years with these liquor licenses. And I just think it would be a horrible vote and a horrible way to vote on that. You know, they want to buy a license for $205,000 and compete with us. That's fine. They have to go borrow that money just like we did. And they have to charge the same we do. You know, you come in and bar across the street only has to pay $100,000 for his liquor license. He's going to sell his product cheaper than me because I have a note at the bank I have to pay. And those are the things that we're just looking for development. But I think you're going to hurt the guys that are been supportive to the city for years and years and years by doing such a thing on that. And that's really, I called 8 or 10 bar owners today that I know personally, and they all are the same thing. This is a bad idea for the liquor industry in Watertown. And that's all I really needed to say. I'm not a very political person. I don't like to be in the eye at all. I'm in business. I don't like to be one way or the other way. I like to be neutral if I can. But this isn't a neutral item. You know, you're getting into something that I don't think we should be involved in, this liquor license thing. I know it's a difficult thing to deal with as a city, but I think we have plenty of restaurants. I don't think we're missing anything. I think our city is thriving. And when we get a population growth, is when we should be talking about more liquor licenses, not until we have no population growth. And that is, to me, the most concerning thing I have in the city of Watertown is the lack of population growth. And that's kind of my 2 cents of that resolution on the liquor license. And thank you for giving me my 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Please state your name.
Larry Indris. I wasn't going to speak, but I got to. I understand the liquor license thing. I've been around here for a long time, so the resolution that you want to do for restaurant/liquor license for $100,000, you're basically opening it up for other restaurants to come to town to be in competition with the restaurants that are already here. And one remark that you made about you could lower this license to $25,000. Well, if you were to do that, then you have people like myself that have a license in a restaurant. I would go in I would be in that 6% food part of it. I could go out and come up here and buy the restaurant/liquor license for $25,000, take my existing liquor license, and go out and compete with the Shooters, the Docks, the Duffys, and the Sparkies of the world. You know, if you did that, if you lowered it to where, okay, I'm not going to say if Roger at Foxy's has 6% food, but if he's the same way, he could come up here and buy a restaurant/liquor license, then take his other liquor license and go out and start another bar to compete with all the bars that are in town. And you could just ruin a lot of stuff for a lot of people. You know, if you had to put, if you had to lower the price from the 205,000 to something, maybe it's 150 grand, but it should be somewhere where the new restaurants coming into town doesn't have an advantage coming to town cheaper than the restaurants that are already here. We've been here for a long time, so why bring a new restaurant into town that should be should be fair. It should be a fair deal where they spent the money like all the rest of us have to open up a restaurant here if they want to serve liquor there. Does that make sense? Understand? Because I had to talk, because when you mentioned dropping the lights at 25,000, it's like, whoa, that's going to open up a whole other can of worms with all the bars that doesn't serve food, but we'd have umpteen more bars in town too.
Right, right.
And they'd all have to survive too, you know, just splitting the pie up that many more ways. Like Roger said, our population isn't going up. All we're doing is splitting the pie up. And we see that now in the big stores in town. You keep splitting the pie up with the internet, now we got buildings sitting around sitting empty because they can't compete. Well, did hate to see with this industry also. So, any questions to me at all?
I do have a question.
Councilman Albertson?
Larry, are you saying, have you talked to other guys that own these licenses?
Oh, yeah.
And what was their thought about 150,000? Because you understand we're just trying to do exactly what you're saying and get more business into town.
Well, I have to be honest. So I heard about this 2 hours ago.
Okay.
So I didn't get prepared very well.
Roger, can you give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down on $150,000?
Thumbs down, it should be 205. They're set for 205 for a reason.
So it'd be no.
It'd be no. Why would you?
Okay. I mean, there is some, what do I want to say, bar restaurants that paid more than $205,000 for their license. Okay, because they didn't want to deal with the, I call it restaurant/liquor license. So they came out to the open market at that time years ago, and they spent, I think it was $215 or $220 for their license. So, and there's other people that I know that spent $180,000, $185,000. Some got $175,000 invested. I mean, they've got a lot of money invested in their licenses. So, if the worst thing that you did, or thing you did, to postpone this for a couple of weeks, and we could talk about it and come up with something that everybody feels comfortable with. But I don't think 100,000 is fair, and for sure 25,000. Whoa, that would just be.
That was a conversation starter.
I know. That's why I had to talk.
Yeah.
So, any other questions?
I do have a question, either Mr. Andrews or Mr. Meyer. So if we left it at $205,000, you don't have a problem with issuing more licenses? You just want the value to be equal to yours?
Exactly. You're exactly right. Exactly right. Yep. But just like it was before, I mean, that's, I believe, if I can ask Matt a question, there's certain towns in the state of South Dakota that hasn't lowered their prices. They still left their license at fair market value. Is that a correct statement to say?
That's correct. So the 10-year period actually started from when the municipality chose to adopt the ordinance.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were pretty quick to do that. So ours was one of the first to expire. Other communities may have waited 6 months, a year, a couple of years. So I believe if we changed ours, last I talked to the municipal league, we would be the first to do so. We'd be the first to actually change our fee. So.
Okay. Because has Aberdeen changed their fee?
Not my understanding that they have, no.
Okay, so because each town, back 10 years ago, each community put out a letter to all the liquor license holders, what they had to cost into them, how much they had into them, what would be the fair market value for these new restaurant/liquor licenses. So every community had a different price on their licenses. Rapid City is at
$295, I believe.
$295,000. So everybody had different prices because each city had a different value on what the licenses were going for. And Watertown, the high price at that time was $205,000, so that's what the city put the price as. Everybody kept their value of their license, what they're worth, what they had into them, and that's why everybody agreed that if a new restaurant wanted to come to town and serve liquor, they'd have to pay $205,000 to get that particular license. Did I answer your question, Josh?
Councilman Lallam?
Mr. Andrews, can you finance these licenses? Or is there banks out there willing to finance the actual license? I mean, essentially it's blue sky, but it really is not blue sky. I mean, it's a piece of paper,
there's,
yeah.
well, yeah,
But they are
because-
financeable.
Oh, yeah, because the banks had a couple of them and got them back, and they sold them, yeah, so yeah, you can, they are, yes,
They're
they're an
an
asset.
asset.
They're
They're an
definitely an
asset.
asset, there's no
Okay.
question about it, they're an asset.
All right.
Councilman Villar?
Matt, excuse me, Matt, I guess I'm going to follow up on the question that Mike asked a few minutes ago. If we don't take, so we're not under any time constraint to take any action on this now?
No, not necessarily, no. I mean, I think that, so for some reason when the ordinance was first passed, there was a deadline put on it, or the resolution. I'd be more comfortable if we passed a resolution that said 205, and it would be repealed at the next chance that the council takes to do so, or changed, just so we have a continuing resolution on the books at 205, in case somebody does come in and want to buy it.
I would agree with Matt on that.
Because I got to say, I mean, we're hearing information that we had not heard before. And I got to say, until a couple hours ago, I had heard nothing from anybody in the public, as far as license holders or public in general, about this issue. I'd be inclined either to do what you're suggesting or to table it. If we table it, do we have to bring it back then next meeting for action, one way or the other?
The correct motion would actually be a postponement to that date certain, if you wanted to postpone it to the next meeting. It's just a technicality, but if you table it, it just has to have a motion to come up off the table. The more appropriate motion would be to postpone it to the next meeting.
Good.
If you wanted more time.
If you want more time, yeah.
Councilman Danforth?
Is there a time frame, a defined time frame, at which this ordinance can be changed again in the future? So I mean, whatever we approve now, whatever it is, doesn't matter. Could it be changed 6 months from now if the council so decided, or a year from now, or is there a specified period?
That's another one of those questions that I don't think the legislature's addressed yet, which would seem to be something that they probably should, because that could potentially create issues if 2 years from now we decide to lower it again or whatever. So, but right now, no, there's no. We basically have free reign to set that license fee by resolution if we've adopted the ordinances at any time we want.
Can I throw something in real quick?
Sure.
Just like Cloud9 out there, they spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, just got done with, putting up a big building. All of a sudden now, somebody that could walk in town for $100,000 and have a liquor license and restaurant and split the pie with them again too. And so everybody dealt with this $205,000 for the last 10 years. That's the where it should be at in Watertown.
Councilman Danforth?
I just want to make a comment. Something that bothers me here, and I understand that it's personal business, but we're not privy to what a license actually sells for. We transact it with the approval of a transfer, but we're never made aware of what a license sells for.
That's true. Yeah.
So we have an arbitrary number. I mean, I hear all kinds of numbers. And Larry, you've mentioned anywhere from 170, 75 all the way up to 220.
Yeah.
So our number, in my opinion, is just an arbitrary number. If I had a way to validate that against real numbers, real sales, it'd be an easier decision for me. Because maybe the real number is 180,000 and not 205. You see what I'm saying? But we don't have any way to validate what the market value is or has been on those licenses?
Yeah, they've probably been over the years, they've been on like a supply and demand, 10 years ago, or I don't want to mention the restaurant that paid $220, but, I'd have to ask them first if they would want to share that information, but I know they were out there paying $215 or $220 for the license. I know there's people that's, have paid the $180 because I'm the one that sold it to them. And if people that pay $175 and, so.
But my point is that this license is more restrictive, and it might be, and I'm saying might be, it might be more expensive on average than what's being sold out there. And I think that would be wrong, to arbitrarily have it be more expensive.
I can't argue with that, Mike, I can't. But the 100,000 isn't the right number, though, that's for sure. And maybe the number is 190, or it's 195, or it's 200, or if it's 180, whatever it might be, but it isn't 100, that's for sure. Because you definitely would lower all the license values in town, and there's 23, am I right, or am I 27?
27 now.
Okay.
I have one question. Liquor licenses are sold per capita, so we have, 27 licenses? What should our population be for those 27 licenses?
27,000, but we've came to that number by the annexations that have occurred over the years.
So we're 5,000 people short of those liquor licenses, right? We're 5 licenses more than we should have. And I think people don't look at that part. We have 5 licenses too many right now. And you want to add to that? We have too many licenses now, the way the rules and regulations have been set. And to me, it's just, they're set. This topic should be discussed when we get to 27,000 people that live in the city of Watertown. It should not be talked until that point. We're kind of wish-washing the law here and kind of moving around it, I think.
Councilman?
Matt, with having 27 licenses, but we're still within state ordinance or state law, correct? I mean, they allow for that, but it just doesn't fit the formula.
It basically got in through that annexation process, so we haven't been challenged on it, from what I understand.
Do we know how other communities compare? Like Brookings and Aberdeen, which have a $100,000 fee on their liquor licenses. Do we know how many liquor licenses they've sold at that fee, or how many total they have compared to their population? Is it less because they have more licenses and so they're?
I don't know that off the top, offhand. I don't know that.
Can I, in the one thing in here? Matt, you said that the $100,000 that Aberdeen put on their licenses is the fair market value price, correct? They haven't changed this restaurant/liquor license yet, like we're doing here, trying to do it here now, right?
I'll be honest with you, I'm not entirely sure what Aberdeen did. So Brookings is 100,000 because they've done what's called the municipal option. So they essentially lease out their liquor license. So it's a little bit of a different process.
So nothing changes in price, and Brookings is going to stay 100,000 for
correct
ever and ever.
Correct.
Okay.
In Aberdeen, I don't believe they're a local option community, but they've also indicated to us that that's the price that it's been the whole time, and so they may have just not been challenged on it because unless the market rate up there is much, much lower.
So that's where the market value for licenses across the board is $100,000. So everybody's on the same playing field in Brookings. Correct statement to say?
In Brookings, that is correct.
Okay. So in Aberdeen, for instance, if Aberdeen has not changed their liquor/restaurant license to $100,000, and that's fair market value, 10 years ago, when they did the survey in Aberdeen, they put a price of $100,000 on their licenses because that's what people were selling them for, and they were moving around. That was the top value in Aberdeen. At that same time in Watertown, it was $205.
That's the part I'm not entirely sure about, whether they actually completed the market survey like they were supposed to. I'm not entirely sure if that occurred or not.
Okay.
But leads you to wonder if maybe they have 40 licenses and similar population, and it's just too many, and so it's worth less.
Right, that's exactly what happens.
And
That's why we're
that,
talking
I mean,
here-
that's what
here
you're
today.
saying would happen here.
Yeah,
And that's, I could see that. Councilman Danforth, did you have something?
Yeah, I would, I'm gonna reiterate what Matt had said, is we're not sure what Aberdeen, how they set their number. We can't tell you that. And Roger, I think, just to make sure, and I hope you understand, is, the state legislature is the one that created this new license. We didn't do that.
that's correct,
Okay,
yes.
so apparently somewhere along the line, they've determined there's a need at the state level for the municipalities.
To me, this license has been talked about
Mike.
through 2 or 3 different councils changes that I've dealt with over the years. This is not the first time this topic has came up. Because, you know, we set the value at 205 and gave people the right to
10
buy.
years ago.
You know?
Right. Well, my point is that it's not this council
No.
looking to arbitrarily just expand license holders
Correct.
with creating a new license. It's the state legislature that created the license that affords us that opportunity.
Matt?
Correct.
Yeah, just real quick,
You're
just to
just trying to-
clarify, the state legislature created the opportunity for cities to do it, and we chose to adopt an ordinance. So it was us that chose to, we didn't have to adopt the ordinance, we did.
But tonight we're sitting here taking the price of what the fair market value was when the ordinance was done, and we're sitting here, you guys are trying to convince that we should lower the price of that, and that's the problem that we have. I mean, the license is there, we agree with that, but the price should be at $205,000. Or somewhere close to it. It shouldn't be at 100 for sure, and it for sure shouldn't go to 25.
Councilman Albertson?
I think that one of the things that's happened since that new bill was put in at the state level, I think cities like Sioux Falls that are going rampant love this because they can get a lot more people, a lot more bars in and so on. And sometimes, I remember seeing that on the television several times about how they're really pushing for this kind of thing in Sioux Falls. They wanted that because their city is, Roger said, if you're expanding by 5,000 people, and they are every month, it's a great deal for them, and may not be a good deal for Watertown after listening to the other side of the coin. It may be that we are just better off the way we are.
Thank
with
you,
the
Dan.
27.
Councilman Thorson?
Yeah, I'd just like to state that in that same statement, every 1,000 they would get one more liquor license available.
Anyone else? Councilman Vilhar?
I guess I'm back to where I was 5 minutes ago, that I don't think we've got a good enough handle on this, at least I don't, that I guess I'd move to, postpone, is that the motion that we're looking at, Matt?
Yeah, it would just postpone, and then the date of the next council meeting, if that's what you choose, is April 15th, so postpone to April 15th.
But what do we do at that point then?
It
At-
becomes-
That same conversation?
Yes,
Correct.
Okay.
but with renewed
With
information.
hopefully better information. I guess I would move to postpone to April 15th.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Vilhar and a second by Thorson. Is there any discussion about that?
I'm hoping that, so this 105 is obviously not the correct number, or 205, or dropping it down to 105. So maybe the business owners can work with us to help come up with a fair price, you know, I mean, I understand that's confidential information, but let's work together and try to get a fair price then, and put it in this ordinance.
Do you not feel 205 is fair?
Just kind of hearing the comments, you know, that some sold for 175, 80, some sold for 220. I mean, we don't know if those numbers are accurate. So,
Larry sold me a liquor license. Okay, we have 2 people who are going to tell you the truth. And I paid you $180,000, I think, Larry, for that license, didn't I? 15 years ago. Should I not have a little value increase in that license? Should it still be worth 180, or should it be worth 205? I feel it should be worth 205. I paid 180 for it. Paid it from Larry. Shouldn't it be worth 205 to me? You know, I think the value of the license is 205. You see some licenses have been sold for 150, 170, 180. But does that license come along with a business that's thriving and making money? So that changes the value of a license a little bit. You know, if you're doing $300,000 with a liquor license, or if you're doing $800,000 with a license, of course those two licenses are worth different money, aren't they?
Sure.
So 205 to me, people are kind of like, wow, that's too much money for a liquor license, and it's not letting people come into business and open a restaurant. But it is a fair price.
Councilman Bueller?
First off, thanks, guys, for coming in and your input. You know, I'm not altogether sure I understand what all the benefits would be moving forward. That's something I think we need to define what the opportunities would be if we did do this, if we did allow this additional type license. I don't know I don't really know for sure, outside of what we've said so far, as we think that we might be able to bring in some more restaurants.
But what you're saying, one more quick here. What we're saying here tonight is that you guys have the authorization to bring an extra license in, okay? And the restaurant people and the people in town know that the license is available. All they want to do is that the new person coming into town decide to start a restaurant to be in the same playing field, that they got to pay $205,000 for that
They really
license.
aren't apples to apples, though, and we have seen liquor licenses change hands. They've been selling in the market. We're not privy to the price. Nobody has bought one from the city for $205, not a single one.
I don't think there was one. I don't think that one of these licenses been sold in the state, is my understanding as of a couple years ago.
I don't know.
That nobody have sold.
They're
them.
not equal. That's why it isn't worth as much. But
Madam Mayor, may I just make a couple of quick comments, because I happened to be in the legislature when this was brought up. And first of all, I don't personally have an opinion as to what you should do on this, and I'm glad I don't have to make the decision, because frankly, government made a huge problem out of this years ago when it created licenses and then allowed them to be sold on the open market, but created a monopoly or an oligopoly. It is a problem that was created decades, if not a century ago, by the whole concept.
Right.
But I will just tell you, to help you focus on what it is you have to decide. When this came to the legislature, it was because there was a battle between the desire for development, and as I recall it, primarily in Rapid City, but certainly Sioux Falls would have been on the same page, and frankly, most of the other cities had the same feeling, that the quality of life and the economic development folks were encouraging a way to open doors to more restaurants. I understand if you're a restaurant owner already here, you don't want more. But for the most part, development interests would be served by additional restaurants. That was where the push came from. Not surprisingly, the counter push was from those folks that already held licenses, and we were heavily lobbied by both sides. And the workout that came was this workout, trying to create a new product, and the mayor's absolutely right. It's not exactly the same product. It is a product that is worth less because you can do less with it. So it doesn't make sense that it would have the same price. Otherwise, the law would have just said, you know, it has to forever be whatever the market price is. But it was to give the local governments the opportunity to do this. But to help you focus, it's back on development, and I guess I would urge you to talk to your development people, as well as protecting what these folks have invested. And it's a horrible private property problem that was created by government, but that's the background of it.
thank you. Would you please state your name?
Oh, I'm sorry, Nancy Turback-Berry.
Thank you.
Formerly state senator when this debacle was kicked back to the local governments.
It's an awful position to be in. Councilman Bueller?
Nancy, while you're there, I got a quick question for you. When you were in that process, did they have any discussions about the variation in costs for these licenses there? Did that come up, and was that the topic?
Oh, sure, and I think that's why the cities individually were allowed to, first of all, even decide if they wanted to market them, and then second, to set them. And for what it's worth, I mean, I don't disagree at all with what these gentlemen have said as far as the private market. You know, that there have been people that have paid $200 or more for them in Watertown for the complete unlimited license. I don't think this was a great workout, but I'll tell you, it wasn't done quickly. It was a knockdown, drag-out battle around how can we solve this. And perhaps it has worked out well in Sioux Falls and Rapid. I don't know. But that's the history of it, and so you have to bear in mind it's balancing development interests with
Maintaining
with,
the
with
market.
trying to help protect the private property value of these folks that did invest in it at a time when they had reason to believe those licenses, that all licenses were going to continue to be limited. And you know, you can't undo what past legislatures or city councils did, but that's where the problem came from, is this government created scarcity, artificial scarcity in a sense.
We monkeyed with the
Thanks.
market.
Thanks, Nancy.
Thank you. Does any other councilman have any comments? Councilwoman Manti, any comments? We do have a motion and a second on the floor
think
to
that's very fine.
postpone
Thank you.
until, thank you, until April 15. So we'll act on that. All in favor of postponement, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, signify by saying nay. Motion carries. It will be postponed.
Well, I'm just taking this all in, but
Okay, item number 6, second reading of ordinance number
I could go along with that.
19-02, adding section 7.1720
aye,
to chapter, thanks Beth.
aye.
That was a really long delay. I'll start over. Second reading of ordinance number 19-02, adding section 7.1720 to chapter 7.17 of the revised ordinances of the city of Watertown to adopt campaign finance disclosure requirements. I'll look for a motion second for approval. Moved by Roby. Second by Danforth, and I would like
That I've never had it that long before.
it's a long delay. I'm going to
Beth Manti.
ask Matt to explain this, and then I'll open the public hearing after he's explained this a little bit.
Thank you, Mayor. So this campaign finance ordinance would essentially, in a nutshell, place onto candidates for local office the same campaign finance filing requirements as the legislative candidates are required to fulfill. So it would require a statement of organization of your campaign, a statement of financial interest, which we are codifying here. That is already required by statute, and it's already being completed, but it is being codified here in ordinance. It would require a pre-election report, no later than 11 days prior to the election. It would require a post-election report, and it would require a year-end report. There was a question this morning about the forms that would be produced by the city. The state Secretary of State has a sample, basically a local jurisdiction form that we can utilize for this purpose. Of course, we have the ability to come up with our own if we would choose to do so, but we wouldn't need to reinvent the wheel in that sense. So if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay. I will open the public hearing. Is there anyone here that would like to speak about this? If so, please come forward. See none, I'll close the public hearing. Council, do you have questions or comments? Councilman Vilhauer?
I've got a question and a comment. This came up the first time we looked at this, a month ago, for consideration in our committee meeting. What are the sanctions? Explain to us if these aren't completed. Again, Matt, what the penalties are for not complying with this?
There are civil penalties in statute that this references. I believe it's $50 a day, and I'd have to double check that. But there is a daily penalty for failure to file on time, and it also provides the ability for, in this case, the city attorney to prosecute violators for violations of a Class 2 misdemeanor.
But it wouldn't be a situation where you'd actually have an election set aside if a candidate did not comply with this.
No.
Okay. And then the comment that I've got is if we pass this, I mean, we're going to have a number of new, and there's going to be a number of people taking out petitions here very soon for open positions here that I remember from personal experience, it's kind of an intimidating process if you're totally new to it. I guess I would suggest that when we hand out the petition to someone that comes in, that we include a copy of this along with it so that they're made aware up front that there is more required now than there has been in the past. I mean, is that something that can be done or included as part of the petition when somebody picks it up?
Councilman Danforth?
Matt, as I look at this, I know when we had discussion weeks ago, whatever it is, we talked about, so let's say I have, at the end of my time in an elected office, I have money left. What can I do with that? I'm not sure, does it state it specifically in here, or is it just references, I believe it just cross-references over to a codified law, right?
Correct. It does reference statute. There's a statute that spells that out, but I can just generally off the top of my head, it's philanthropic purposes, it's other political purposes, and the like. You can't use it to enrich yourself, essentially.
Can we stipulate in more detail where that money can go to? Because if I had, whatever that number is, 1,000 or 10 or 30,000, whatever that number is, I could, and you're running, I could give it to you if for your campaign to go.
Correct.
Personally, it's somewhat contradictory to what we're doing in limiting the support or donations on a individual basis. But now I've got thousands in the bank potentially, and I give it to you. Can we dictate that would go to something, to United Way, go to something?
That's a novel idea, actually. The statute doesn't require us to adopt it in full. It allows us to add amendments to the statute. It says that local jurisdictions have that ability. I don't see an issue off the top of my head with that. I would have to do a little digging, but to specify a charity or something like that where money would go to, or if you just wanted to specify charities generally or something like that, we could certainly, I could look at language and bring this back for another reading if you wanted to add something.
Mayor and anybody else, I look at what our intent is here, and not only just disclosure, but you look at the state laws and the restrictions on how much an individual or a company, a business, whoever, can give to an individual campaign, and then we have a potential balance that we don't know what that amount's going to be, and it could just be given to a candidate. And that just seems contrary to what I would hope our goal or objective is here. I would rather see any funds at the end, they go back to the well-being of our community, and that would be a charity.
I like that. Councilman Bueller?
Mayor, if I might. Did you mention before that this could be carried over for another campaign? You'd have to open a special account for those funds. Now, would you have to open an account anyway? A special account for these funds? So if you're running for office, you'd need to open up a separate bank account.
Correct.
For those funds to reside.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Anyone else? Councilman Vilhauer?
I guess that now begs the question. Let's say we open up that special bank account, which I know I did 4 years ago for my campaign. Okay, and in that bank account, we're dumping our own dollars as well as donations that we're receiving. At the end of the day, when the election's over, if there's money that's left in there, now I'm looking at, Mike, what happens to that? Because a lot of those dollars were mine. Do I have to give that over to a charity or wherever we designate, or because those are my dollars, do I have the right to take those back out?
You would not have to give your own dollars to that special account, would you?
You wouldn't have to. I mean, you can completely self-fund.
Yeah.
It might make it easier for you to do your own internal accounting if you did.
But even if it's self-funded, we still need to comply with the filling out of the reports, though.
Correct.
Right, but the end, what I'm referring to, and that's a good point, Glenn, but at the end, whatever that balance is, I would hope that yours is over here, and whatever's left there is from donors, and that decision should be made.
Councilman Roby?
My initial thought on this is, good thought, but if you have extra campaign funds left over and you're not going to transfer them to your next campaign, you can hold them to your next campaign if there is indeed one. It almost seems to me it should be returned to the donors. You know, you think of people that have run for office, raised a bunch of money, they back off, then they return them to the donors.
But which donors?
So the question is, I would maybe just, I would prorate it. Well, if you only raise $3,000 and you got 400 donors, you're going to send $1.98 to everybody. So the idea, maybe just an option to return to donors or charity. I just would throw it out there because really isn't that where typically it should go?
I would just clarify one thing, just for sake of the discussion. Of course, if you did give that money, if you would close out your account and gave it to Councilman Lallam, he would then have to report that. So in the interest of open government, there would still be sunshine on that, if you will. But just want to throw that out there.
Councilman Lallam?
South Dakota codified law, it looks like 122750 basically which is what they're using. It basically says donations are to any other candidate, political committee, or nonprofit charitable organization. So they're saying you can give it to a charitable organization if we basically take South Dakota's.
Right, but you can also give it to another campaign.
Right. I mean, is that an option? I mean, that's what the state does. That's what county people do. That's what super PACs do. I mean, it's the same type of deal. Do we need to limit that for this?
We don't have to do the same thing, though. We aren't required to do this at all. So
No, I understand
we
that.
can, if
But we give
you
them the
think
option
it's
that they
right.
can.
Yes, the way it's written, there's an option for that.
So what if you were going to run for city council and had money you got left and you want to run for governor?
Yeah.
And you want to give your money from Adam Lallam I'm not running for governor, just FYI. But Adam Lallam for city council to Adam Lallam for governor.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so we're saying we got to give it to a charity instead of
Right.
going back. and
No.
asking?
That's what
understand that.
Mike was suggesting, but, right, that
What I'm
if there
saying,
was
if
any
you're going to run
leftover.
for some other office, that'll be in the
Yourself.
paper tomorrow, by the way, Adam. So, if you're going to run for some other office, that money can be used for that purpose, correct? I'm saying at the end, when you're not going to do it anymore, you have your best intentions to not hold office anymore, and you've got money in the account. It just seems wrong to me, because we don't know what those dollars are. It just seems wrong that I'm limited as a person to 50 or 100 or whatever that number is, but then because you were really good at raising funds, you could give the whole darn thing to somebody. It just seems contrary to part of what what I would think our goal or objective is. So I just throw that out because it seems odd to me that would be allowed.
Excuse me just a minute. Councilwoman Manti is calling back in. So if you can help her connect. Councilman Roby?
Matt, if I may put you on the spot on this one. Mike, that's a noble idea. I like the idea. It's partially covered in the law at this point. Matt, in your opinion, is the way that's written, do you foresee an issue with this in the future? Is it something we monitor, or do we need to add something to change something?
Councilman, an issue as in, somebody dumping all their campaign cash to somebody else. I think it could be something we monitor, of course. I would hope that if somebody was running for office, they would likely use up a lot of their money and not get more than they need. But in theory, but it's certainly something we can monitor. If this isn't passed tonight, more than likely it's going to be very difficult to have this be enforced for this election. Just an FYI.
Other comments or questions? There is a motion to pass as is. Seeing no further comment, I'm going to look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. So we have one nay and Okay, Councilwoman Manti, I'm not sure if she's gone. Do you need a roll call? Okay, roll call vote, please.
Albertson,
Yes.
Bueller. Yes. Danforth,
Nay.
Lallam,
Yes.
Manti,
Yes.
Roby,
Aye.
Solom,
Yes.
Thorson,
Yes.
Billhauer,
Yes.
Y.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Mayor, can I just make sure that people understand, I'm all for the ordinance. I just think that last element of discussion should be included. It's not that I'm against the ordinance and the basis of it.
Thank you, Councilman Danforth. Understood. All right, item number 7 is authorization for the mayor to sign South Dakota Department of Transportation Alternatives Agreement with the State of South Dakota Department of Transportation for Transportation Alternatives Project PTAPU 25 PCN 0745 for the accepted funding under the Fixing America's Surface Transportation Act, the FAST Act, for transportation alternatives. And I'll look for a motion second for approval. Moved by Lallam, second by Bueller. And we have a couple of folks here to talk about this. Heath, did you want to say anything before I hand it over?
No, Madam Mayor, I was just going to pass it off to Jay
Okay.
myself, so feel free.
All right, we have the Park and Rec Director, Jay DeLang here, and the engineer, Vanessa Victor, for the project, so.
Okay. Thank you. This request is for the authorization for the mayor to sign the agreements with the Department of Transportation for the Federal Transportation Alternative grant that we were awarded, we found out in January. This is the one that we applied for last summer. We gave a presentation in November and again found out in January. This would be for the section of the trail on the Compesca Loop. It would be from Parkview Drive to Linwood Drive on the west side of Old 139. Is that South or North Lake Drive? I think it's south.
It's south.
Yeah.
South Lake Drive, yes.
Yes.
Vanessa, did you want to add anything?
You know, we presented before we were going to apply for this grant. We did try to maximize the amount of dollars. We were awarded $400,000, which is the grant cap for this, which is about a 37% share for the city, which actually looks really good to the DOT when they're looking at buy-in. We split Phase 3 into 2 segments to apply for this, and we intend on applying for another grant through the same program for the rest of Phase 3 that will continue from Linwood Drive basically to Sandy Shores.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the council? Councilman Danforth?
Vanessa and Jay, will we apply for the additional grant money and then hold these monies that we were just awarded and have a project, or does this have to be used up? You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
Are we going to have a segmented project, or are we going to try to accumulate?
Ideally, we will apply it in the next grant cycle again, and ideally it will be bid as one giant package. It's just split out differently. If we're not successful with the second award, then we will be bidding this on its own and hopeful for a future award. It is a time-consuming process, so I mean, even from now to construction, we're a few years out.
When is the expected construction date?
2021, 2022.
Okay. Councilman Vilhar?
Am I reading this right, that we would have to have those dollars used by the end of 2022? Is that correct? I'm looking at the term on bottom of page 5.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So that would be project completion.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
If Pete could, I've got that map of this current phase on my screen, just for reference, if anybody were interested in an update on that. This portion on the west side of the lake in yellow is what this current agreement would be applied towards.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments? We applied for the grant, we are awarded the grant, and this enables me to sign the grant agreement. So I have a motion and second on the floor. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 8 is authorization for the mayor to sign a 2-year airline transportation system lease agreement with SkyWest Airlines, Inc. And I will look for a motion and second for approval. Moved by
Aye.
Wise, second by Lallam. And I will, let's see, Todd's right here, and I'll let Todd go ahead and, Todd Syrie is the airport manager. Do you want to tell us about this, Todd?
Yes. So this is a 2-year agreement. This follows the Essential Air Service contract dates. So the price has changed from the last agreement we had with California Pacific ADI. We did go to $7 a square foot for shared space and $10 a square foot for exclusive space. We did a rate and fee study in 2016-17 between a tri-state area, and that's what we found for fair market value, which the FAA loves us to get fair market value. This was also approved by the airport board today in recommendation to go ahead with this. So if there's any other questions, let me know.
Thank you. I'd like to open the public hearing and see if anyone is here to speak about this. If they are, please come forward. See none, I will close the public hearing. Council, do you have any questions or comments? Councilman Lallam?
Todd, this is a 2-year agreement. Is there an extension, or do we just, is there like an automatic another 2 years, another 2 years, another 2 years type deal, or if we look increases on that? If we do?
So the air service can switch every 2 years per the Essential Air Service contract. So this is a 2-year agreement. We'll go back out for bid prior to the 2-year agreement ending, and we should know before this contract expires who the next carrier is. If indeed it is this carrier, I would refer Matt, but I believe we could extend this carrier's contract, bringing it back to you if we have both parties sign.
We would actually just have to enter into a new agreement. There's no renewal in this agreement, so.
Other comments or questions? See none, I'll look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Councilman Vilhauer?
As long as they're, Todd, everything's still on track for Wednesday?
I hope so. Yeah.
The first flight leaving Watertown, we're going to have a little celebration on Wednesday. So starting at
3:15.
3:15.
Correct. You can be there about 3 o'clock. We'll get everything set up. We'll have news media out there. We're going to try and do a water cannon blast with our ARF trucks over the top, kind of a rainbow as they come in. We'll have a dedicated spot on the ramp. You get some cool pictures of that, hopefully the weather permitting. We'll have a ribbon cutting at about 3:15 to 3:20. It will be the mayor's speech, and then right after that we'll have a ribbon cutting. So come on out for cake and champagne and a good time.
And the passengers will get on, and the plane leaves at
4:46 on time.
4:46. The first flight out with United Express.
And I don't want to put you on the spot, Todd, but I know at the airport board meeting I caught part today, you were given an update as far as what the status is of our supplemental grant application with for the terminal. Do you want to say a couple words about that as far as when we can expect to hear something?
I would hope soon. We had the South Dakota Airports Conference last week, had a great discussion with the FAA and the State Airlines Commission. The State Airlines Commission did award for the supplemental only a little over $517,000 for their state apportionment for the terminal funding. So if we get supplemental, the state apportionment's already covered 100%, so that's great news. We were kind of hinging on that a little bit. They wanted to not spend so much, but they did give in and spend the whole amount of the 517. So that's good news. We should hear supplemental. We're hoping in the next couple of weeks is what we got from the FAA last week. Now, there's no guarantees. We could hear in a month. We could hear tomorrow. We don't really know.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, moving on. Item number 9 is authorization for the mayor to sign a memorandum of understanding with Prairie Lakes Healthcare System. I'll look for a motion second for approval. Moved by Vilhauer, second by Albertson. And I see Assistant Fire Chief Don Rowland is here. Don, you want to tell us about this?
Yeah, just, am I on now? Basic a little history, we've been doing transfers, interfacility transfers with Prairie Lakes Hospital for 40 plus years, and we've never had a agreement in place. And I visited with the folks up at Prairie Lakes Hospital, and they felt kind of the same thing, that we should probably have a memorandum of understanding in place. So essentially what I did is I visited with the ops folks up there and worked with Attorney Roby over here to put together a memorandum of understanding. And basically the interfacility agreement states that we are the first choice for them for transfers for other cities like Sioux Falls, Rapid City, not Rapid City, Aberdeen, Minneapolis, and Rochester. So essentially we'd be the first to write. Again, what happens in this agreement is we still maintain the 911 responsibility for the city, so the staffing resources have to be in place for us to still continue to take those transfers. We've been doing it for a long time, and we felt that this would be a great agreement to have in place with Prairie Lakes Hospital.
Thank you. Any questions for Don? Or comments? Seeing none, I'll look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Thank you.
I called in Spencer.
All those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. I think we got you, Beth. It's like a 20-second delay.
Sorry.
That's all right. Glad you're there. Item number 10 is authorization for the mayor to sign a temporary occupancy permit with BNSF Railway Company. I'll look for a motion second for approval, and then I'll explain this. Moved by Danforth and second by Roby. Okay, with the flood emergency that we had recently, there was a concern that we might need to place a berm across the railroad, and so we had to get permission from the railroad in order to do that, which we did. I had declared an emergency just prior, so I went ahead and signed this agreement without council authorization, which the declaration of emergency allowed me to do legally, but I wanted the council to be aware that I did that, and in case they wanted to ask any questions or understand fully what it was we were actually doing here. It's a pretty big deal to close a railroad, and if luckily we didn't have to, but if we did have to, we're very grateful that the railroad gave us permission, and they waived the fee for it too, so that was really great. Are there any questions about this or comments? We had perfect weather conditions. Had we had rain, we could have had a completely different situation. Also, if the temperature had remained warm longer, we also could have had a completely different situation. But we got out there in front of it and had the levees beefed up beforehand, and we were ready in case we had flooding. We still do have a little bit of flooding at the lakes. Both lakes are experiencing flooding right now, Pelican and Kempeska. But the roadways are all clear in town. And I understand South Lake Drive, which had water over it, is also now clear. So waters are receding, and it will be a slow time down, but hopefully the weather will continue to cooperate and we won't bounce back up into another flood emergency. So if there aren't any questions, I will go ahead and look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Thank you. Item number 11 is presentation of the final report of recommendations of the 2019 Home Rule Charter Revision Commission. And Matt, I'll let you summarize this, and I know we have a speaker here as well.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, so as most everyone knows, the current version of the charter reads that every 5 years a Home Rule Charter Revision Commission convenes and discusses at no less than 4 meetings any recommendations for changes to the charter. And a group was appointed. 2 members were appointed from each council person and 1 from the mayor. They met, I believe, 7 or 6 times.
I think 7.
7 times. And the ordinance states that they shall have their final presentation by the first meeting of April. And it being the first meeting of April, the chairman, Mr. Kyle Lallam, is here to make that presentation.
Thank you, Attorney Roby. Thank you, Mayor and Council. I did do in our preliminary report that I gave you on the 18th many of those things, and I know that you are all supplied with the revised Home Rule Charter. The additions, subtractions, corrections, they're all in red. Should be in your packet as well as what's posted in the public record. So from the initial recommendations that we brought on the 18th to today, there's only a few changes that were made, so I'll just highlight those few changes that were made, and then I'll run into this PowerPoint. PowerPoint's basically a synopsis of the work that this commission has done. And just if you could afford me the opportunity to thank the commission members themselves, it was really just a great joy to work with them. I know I've got Nancy Turbach-Berry as one of our commission members in the crowd today, so I would thank her and recognize her in public, and all the other members that are most likely at home glued to their computers or televisions watching this today with bated breath. So some of the changes that we've done since the initial presentation on the 18th, one of the things that we changed is in this Home Rule Charter, you'll see City Council is referenced and capitalized throughout the document. That now means both in this change, if the voters would elect to do that the elected council is both council and mayor. So throughout that document, you'll see either city council or governing body. City council, governing body are all interchangeable in this document. We were also asked to look at term limits, and after some discussion on that, we decided that it would not be brought forward to the change to the charter to put term limits inside the charter itself. We also, from the information that we presented on the 18th until today, we did move the city finance officer into section 4 of the charter before it was in its own section. And I'll get to that in the presentation here momentarily. And then the onboarding process was also something that we discussed at our final meeting, and that onboarding process will also be spelled out in this presentation slideshow. So I'll run through this. Without questions, it's under 6 minutes, so it's pretty quick, and we'll go from there. So based on the meetings that the Home Rule Charter Commission has had, it is our recommendation that we change our form of government from a strong mayor to a council manager form of government. This council manager form of government encourages open communication between the citizens and their elected governments. It's a system of local government that combines strong political leadership of the elected officials or governing body, like I referenced, with the professional managerial experience of an appointed local government manager. The voting and oversight of this, under this form of government, each member of that governing body, or the city council and mayor, has got an equal voice in both policy development and the administrative oversight of the hired manager position. Like you've discussed tonight at length, the council retains the right for the oversight of the city. They establish policy, the direction and vision of the city. They approve and control all of the budget and spending, just like you do right now. You approve all expenditures. You also approve and authorize all contractual agreements, just like you've done. And you also have, the governing body also has the power to hire, supervise, and terminate the city manager based on simple majority of those governing bodies. Once the decisions are made by the governing body, the manager implements them regardless of his or her, whether or not he or she agrees with that decision. Governing body makes the rules, city manager implements those rules. City manager is typically a career public administrator. They serve as the chief administrative officer of the city's workforce. I mean, they are in charge of the department heads. They allow the department heads to manage their people, but they administer and are the oversight for all departments. They're hired based on education, experience, and training. They typically have a master's degree in at least public administration or business administration. And we would expect, based on the information that we've gathered in our process, that they would at least have previous experience as a assistant city manager or in a position of city manager in a smaller community. The hiring process, the July 2019 election, the election that's coming up right now, that's part of that onboarding process that we wanted to make sure we had clarity when we presented this to you. So those 10 council members will be the individuals that interview and hire that new city manager. They will determine the compensation and they will determine start date. The proposed transitional structure, the current mayor based on the rules, will continue in this case, Mayor Karen's role will continue until July of 2021. The 5 current council members will continue until July of 2021. And the 5 new council members that will be elected in this June's election at the same time as this would serve until the new council manager form begins in July of 2021. City manager's responsibilities. Their responsibilities include, but certainly aren't limited to, they oversee the day-to-day operations of the city as directed by mayor and council. They're the chief administrative officer for the city. They attend all the council meetings. They're allowed to participate, but don't vote. They keep the council fully advised as to the financial condition and future needs of the city. They appoint, manage, and suspend all department heads, including the attorney and finance officer. They direct and supervise all departments, offices, and agencies. They prepare and submit the annual budget and capital program for the council approval. They prepare and submit updates to the 5-year capital plan annually to council. They prepare and submit updates to the 5-year financial plan to the council annually. They submit all financial reports and administrative activities to the council, at least on an annual basis. They will have the ability to sign contracts, but only with council approval or governing body approval. They ensure all the laws, ordinances, acts of council are fully executed. They provide staff support for both mayor and council. And this is always my favorite in contracts, other duties as assigned. So it's other duties as specified by the charter or other duties as required by council. Now you talk about that reduced council size. All members, again, will have equal voting rights and have oversight of that city manager with the ability to hire, review, suspend, and replace that city manager. So starting in July of 2021, the council members, the council or governing bodies would reduce from 10 members to 7 voting members. And it's our recommendation, based on the information that we've got from the interviews that we have done with existing city managers, retired city managers, information that we've gotten from ICMA, which is the International City County Management Association, National Civic League. Their recommendation in that structure is a reduced council size. So we felt it was important for us to keep that ward system in place. So starting in that election of 2021, you would have 5 council members, 1 per ward. Then you would the city would be allowed to vote for 1 council member at large from any of the 5 wards. The mayor is voted at large, and then obviously all 7 members are voting members of that governing body. Now, when we're talking about having staggered terms, this is what we did in the draw of the hat, and I know that we touched on this at my presentation on the 18th, but based on the draw of the hat, wards B, C, and E would initially serve a 2-year term in that 2021 election. Okay? So they would serve a 2-year term from 2021 to 2023, but after the 2023 election, there would be 4-year terms from there on out. And then wards A, D, and the at-large ward would initially be elected to a 4-year term starting in 2021 along with that mayor. And that's based on South Dakota codified law. I added that down here on the bottom. But that's basically, you need to elect a new governing body once the new form of government is enacted by the voters. So that's the reason that we had to do that. Okay? Under that new form of government, the revised duties of the mayor will be as follows. First and foremost, and primarily, when you're talking about a voter-centric deal, would be to develop and establish policy, the direction and vision for Watertown. They again would preside over all council meetings with full voting rights. They would represent the city in all intergovernmental relationships. They would appoint citizens to the advisory boards, committees, and commissions. They have the ability, or they present the annual State of the City address. They're recognized as the head of government for all ceremonies, and they're recognized by the head of government for the purposes of military law or emergencies. But they do have no administrative rights. The administrative rights shift into that hired professional city manager. One of the other things that we felt important with this change in form of government was we now changed the council attendance requirement. Now this is unexcused absences from 50% to 85%, because we felt that it was important in that voter-centric kind of a form of government that those elected officials should be here to represent their citizens, because they're the one, the governing body is going to be the one to direct that city manager on how they want our city to go. And lastly, here's kind of the structure for how it sets up. It's voters first, and then you've got that governing body with, again, comprised of mayor and council. City manager is below them, and then the department heads and all of the other subordinates that are underneath the department heads. And in closing, the council manager form establishes a representative system of government where all the power is concentrated on the elected officials, those elected council members and the mayor, and where the governing body hires a professionally trained manager to oversee the delivery of public services. And that is our recommendation. And there ends my report, and I'll answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much. And I must say that was a very efficient process. There was a lot of work to do, and 21 people is a lot of people to weigh in on it, and they did. It worked out very, very well. I was so impressed.
Yeah, I agree. We had a great group. There was a lot of information that we tried to collect in a short amount of time, so there was a lot of emails that, here's our agenda and here's something that you should do your research on so you can come prepared. And we had a great engaging group, so thank you for that.
And the full group was in support of this. I don't think there was any dissent.
We did not have any dissent as far as our recommendation to change our form of government. That's correct. Thank you.
Yeah. So are there questions? Councilman Vilhauer?
Kyle, do you want to touch on just briefly, because it was discussed at your meeting, your last couple meetings, in fact, as far as what role your group is going to take as far as promoting or getting the word out on this, or what the expectations are, if you wouldn't mind touching on that just briefly.
Well, as far as the commission is concerned, the expectations are nothing. Our job is done. But we felt it was important as a group to make sure that we educated the voters of the community on the benefits to this. So we have taken it upon ourselves to make ourselves available for the press and for newspaper and for all the service clubs that are out there. The presentation that I gave you here is kind of a minimized version of what we would do, because there's more questions that the voters would have, but we have elected to take that on ourselves to promote that. So,
thank you. Councilman Albertson?
Kyle, I have a question on the person at large. Will they run? Will the people run? Would somebody run for that? So would there be an election for an at-large, or is it the loser of, you know what I'm saying?
No, because the reason that we did that is because we have staggered the terms.
Yeah.
So if I can go back to that slide, they would run as an at-large. They would pull a petition to run at-large.
To run at-large, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
And thanks to your group, too, by the way. I attended several of them, and I thought you did a great job as a 21-person group.
It was a good group.
Councilman Roby?
In terms of awareness and educating the public, that could be a lot of work, and we're going to have a lot of clubs, but it's work that's got to be done. So I thank whoever gets involved in that. Are we planning any community presentations? For example, when we were promoting the wellness facility, we did a lot of presentations to clubs and individuals and that kind of thing. But we also did, I can remember the one we had out at the theater at the event center. And what I remember from that is there's so many misperceptions on issues like these where they come into it and you got to get the real story out. And if you vote no or yes based upon the real information,
That's
good. That's what we want. But that solid information and what's rumor and innuendo gets confused sometimes. When we had those public meetings, and specifically one at the event center, there were people that came in with total misperceptions and said, okay, I didn't understand it that way. Now I know what you're wanting, and now I know how I'm going to vote. So I hope we do some public meetings and open to big crowds if need be.
Absolutely, yeah, and thank you for that. It's I did, and I will point out Councilman Solom. He did reach out to us and offer the event center for that, so I appreciate that. It is our intent to do some public forums, large public forum, event center, LATI on their fourth floor. If we can coordinate that out, I agree with you 100% that. This is an opportunity for our community, much like the H2O20 visioning process was. And it is our goal to make sure that the voters are voting in an educated manner. I mean, I am fine if somebody asked me, are you going to be disappointed if it doesn't pass? I would be disappointed if we didn't educate them enough. But if we do our part to educate them and it doesn't pass, that's the way it's set up, and we're fine with that.
Councilman Danforth?
Yeah, I just have a couple questions. The probably a Matt question. The at-large individual, so you would declare that you're going at-large, and so right now, if I'm running in Ward A, I got to have signatures from within my ward, so the at-large would be wherever, right?
Correct.
Right. Second thing is, highly likely that the city manager would be hired before, I would hope, before the end of the next 2 years, so that they're ready to roll with the election.
That was why we made the revision to enable the council that is elected in 2019 the opportunity to do that.
Right.
The reason is because when you're budgeting for 2021, it's going to be done in 2020. So the rationale is that it should be accounted for.
Right.
And most of the information that we have gathered as a commission, most communities that do that change of government form will hire an outside entity. Certainly within your privy to do that, but they will bring in a group that basically acts as a headhunter group to bring in viable candidates.
So I think it's a good thing that that person gets hired in advance, but during that time frame then, the mayor maintains her responsibility. Who does the city manager answer to then during that time? I'm assuming the mayor during that time?
It is my understanding, and I'll defer to Matt, but it's my understanding that based on the way that the Home Rule Charter is written now, and based on South Dakota codified law, the city manager's, Mayor Kieran, would be responsible for the administration of her duties until the council that is elected in that 2021 election is sworn in. So the city manager so as a hypothetical, if the council opts to bring in the new hire city council or city manager position and they come in April 1st, Mayor Karen would still be in charge of the operation of day to day, with the city manager obviously reporting to, I guess by default, Matt can correct me if I'm wrong, until the mayor, until that ratification of those council members.
Yeah, I mean, that could probably take a couple different forms, I suppose. If they came in, say they came in April, like Kyle suggested, and just came in as a kind of somebody that, frankly, just maybe reported to the council for those 3 months, and just kind of floated there and learned what was going on in the city until they took power in July. But the way this is written doesn't really prescribe that necessarily, so that'll be up to the group to decide. Yeah.
Then, Matt, just for clarity purposes, what are we doing tonight? Are we accepting their recommendations then? And then it then automatically gets scheduled then for the vote in the general election in June?
Correct. The way the ordinance reads is that the presentation is made, there's no action required of the council, and then the recommendations, if any, of course, there are a fair amount here, go on the ballot.
Councilman Lallam?
Matt, would you have to write basically a ballot measure, like, kind of like what the Attorney General does on the state stuff, where it's city attorney's presentation of this to the general public? So if voted on, a yes means X, a no means currently.
Correct.
Okay.
Anyone else? And for the record, I support this. In case anyone's wondering, I think it's appropriate for our community, and I'm glad that the committee was unanimous in their decision. That makes it easier for me to say that I support it. Yes.
Mayor Nancy Turbeck-Berry, I just want to make 3 quick comments. One is that this it was a tremendous amount of work, and it is a significant change, and it was accomplished in a fairly short time period, not because anybody was hasty or superficial or in any way careless, but it was primarily accomplished in that time period because Kyle Lallam did an absolutely extraordinary job. He worked hard on this, not just during our meetings, but in between, and frankly blew me away, and I think it was just beyond what I was glad I was not in his shoes. He did a lot of work and a great job. Second, I would echo, I think it was Don Roby's comments about how important it is for people to be educated, because the default position tends to be no. I noticed, for example, that when the public opinion first published on Facebook the recommendation, and I think they maybe even had at least a rhetorical question, are you in favor or not? And I started looking at the comments. Lots of negative comments from people that I am quite certain were not at any of our meetings. And that didn't surprise me, but it is disappointing when people's knee-jerk reaction will be no, and you happen to know from your personal observation that they were not present to listen to the various speakers or to hear the discussions of the commission. So I really think it is terribly important for people to get educated. And the third thing I would like to say is that although our commission and several particular individuals on it will try to take the leadership at getting the word out, we absolutely invite and encourage the mayor and the council to speak up. You are folks who are respected as being knowledgeable on this, and it's going to be important that the community understand that the change is not intended to undermine the mayor or undermine any of the council members, either collectively or as individuals. And if you are supportive of this, I really urge you to participate with us in educating people and encouraging its support. Thank you.
I generally accept invitations to speak to groups whenever they're offered to me, and I have already accepted one to speak about this topic. And if anyone's out there and listening and wants me to come to your group, I'd be happy to do that.
And I would echo that as well. Both Byron Calise and I, as chair and vice chair, we feel it is part of our duty to usher in this educational piece to the voters. And I appreciate Nancy's comments of the diligence, but it was easy to do because we had a great group. And I think everybody, once they had delved into what this allows our community to do, I think everybody kind of saw the light that's in there. I have supplied a copy of the full document to the public opinion as well as both of the radio stations. They all have that. I will be on one of the radio stations tomorrow as a Q&A, and we have been invited into the other radio station as well. Certainly encourage, whether it's coffee with the mayor or anything like that, have those groups. Individuals that have questions are welcome to reach out to us as commissioners, and we will do everything within our power to make their meetings and presentations so that we can get the information out as best we can.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mayor, I'd just like to say thank you guys for doing this. I know you put a lot of time and effort into it, and good job. Good job. I think a lot of information was provided, and you guys deserve a big round of applause. So.
All right, moving on. Item number 12 is consideration of request for proposals received for a comprehensive classification and compensation study. And we don't have a recommendation on here, so I won't take a motion yet, but we will get one. And I'll let Kristen explain what this is.
Thank you, Mayor. There was a group of us, and I'll actually have Audra and Chris come up for when the council potentially has questions. But there was a group of us that studied these RFPs, and I'll kind of go through some of the things. But just a little backstory, we did in 2018 put in the budget for 2019 to do a wage study. So part of that process is to send out requests for proposals, and we did that. We received 4 that came back to the city. We as a group sat down, and I should say it was the mayor, Matt, Audra, Chris, and myself who sat down and we reviewed them. At that time, we did determine that 2 of them we would kind of take out of the mix and really dive into the 2. The 2 that we looked at more closely was Condrey and Associates as well as McGrath. We did a lot of reference calls and kind of just asked what the experience was with both of these companies. I will say that our group is kind of pretty much half and half with both. There's some similarities and some differences. The biggest thing with Condrey has 30 years of experience, and there are 500 similar projects with state and local governments. Condrey is also the one that you will see has been used by some of the cities throughout South Dakota, Aberdeen, Rapid City, Mitchell, Huron, Pierre, I think. So that's the one thing that they have the tie to. A lot of the municipalities that are similar to us have used Condrey and Associates. McGrath has 18 years of experience. They have over 300 clients in 34 states. They don't have quite as much local as Condrey does. They're kind of Dodge City, Kansas. There was Northfield, Minnesota, and then help me out, a couple in Wyoming, Sheridan, I think. So they don't have quite the same presence in the local. When we made our reference calls, of course, with anything, you hear some of the pros, some of the cons. What was attached to the agenda broke down when we sent out the RFPs. We looked at 4 different kind of categories that we expected to get out of it, and then you'll see the cost. Condrey would be obviously more expensive by their quotes if we went for the full package, where we wanted not only the compensation and classification study, but we wanted the job descriptions reviewed, and if we wanted more of a whole organization structure review, then for that total package it was around $84,500. Whereas McGrath came in that they would do all of those things for $49,250. So I guess too, we put it out there because if we were going to go out for RFPs, we wanted to be able to, if we wanted those things, to know how much they would cost, even if we don't do them all right now. We have a ballpark of what some of that would cost. So I guess at this point, I think I'd like some feedback from the council and any of the members of the group to kind of step up and say what they think as well, in regards to, are we just looking for the compensation classification, or do we want to take a deeper dive into the jobs, the structure, stuff like that? So I'd be open for comments, and like I said, as far as the group, we're kind of right on there. Probably the last comments that I will say is, I think if you're looking for a group that has more of a local, they know our local market, I think Condrey would be that pick. If you're looking for some new, fresh eyes to look at us a little bit maybe different and then provide the whole package, I think McGrath would be the pick. So with that, and I don't know if the mayor has anything to add.
Yes, I'd like to add to that. The budget was $50,000, and I will have to say, I think that both of these firms are entirely competent. We heard rave reviews from both, references from both of them, and so I'm very confident no matter who we choose, they'll do a good job for us. I don't think it's necessary that they've done work in South Dakota, for them to do good work in South Dakota, they will utilize all of the information which is public record for these local towns in South Dakota. I support McGrath because for our budget, we can get the entire project that we wanted to get done. And the organizational structure review is something I've been doing myself, and I really would like a professional opinion on that and some help. They'll do it for us. That's part of the package with McGrath. We'll have to modify the budget if we hire Condrey to do that. If I had any hesitation about the qualifications of McGrath, I would definitely go with Condrey because they have that local knowledge, and that is worth something. But I think that McGrath is very competent as well. They're not incompetent. And they're a somewhat smaller firm. We get more for our money if we choose McGrath. So that's kind of why I support that. Does anybody else want to, Matt, did you want to weigh in at all?
I would just, I would echo essentially what you said. I think that there is some value in that fresh set of eyes.
Mm-hmm. Audra or Chris, do you want to say anything? Okay, Councilman Roby?
Maybe say what Matt said, but take a lot longer to say it. You know, having the local flavor sometimes is great because you understand your market better, but a lot of times inherently there's a bias that creeps into that when you do it long enough. So I will ask kind of the question you made, is there a benefit to having somebody who brings a fresher perspective?
I think to that point, I think it's that unknown because they don't have a presence yet in South Dakota as far as we can see. So what's difficult for that is, a fresh set of eyes is always good, but then we're stepping away from the group that we know actually has presence here in South Dakota and has done the market here. So it's kind of, that's what's difficult is we haven't used either one of these. So we ourselves don't have any experience with any of the RFPs that came in.
Councilman Lallam?
I got a couple questions here. Not having local ties, is that going to impede their search? I mean, they can do public search, but are they going to be able to contact the previous places that they've done this on and be able to get that? So, like, Condrey has done them in the past with the 4 or 5 communities you said. Does that impede McGrath's search ability to be able to call them up and say, hey, we did this in your guys' community? Is that going to hurt them?
Are you asking whether or not McGrath could get Condrey's information?
I know they can get it, but is it going to impede their time frame and be able to do it as quickly or efficiently versus, hey, Bill in Aberdeen, we talked about this a couple years ago.
I think they both provided us with time frames, and I don't have it up. Kristen looks like she has it here, but they would more than likely would fulfill the time frame they indicated in the RFP. Hopefully, of course.
Both had Condrey came in and they said it would be about a 4-month. McGrath's a little bit longer. They have more of a 5-month is kind of the way it's trending. And now if we wanted to do with McGrath too, part of their time frame is even longer if we do that whole package. So that's the thing with them is if we went with McGrath and we wanted that whole package, it does extend the time, but it's not that bad if the time's extended. I mean, we can make that work too within. It kind of throws off our initial thought with the budget, but the one thing is that the council has the authority within the first meeting of January to amend the budget if we've put in some type of a cushion. We'll have a point there where we would know where we're trending. I think they'll be keeping us up to date. So we may not have the whole structure and all that done, but we could probably have some of the numbers by then.
Does it increase our benefits by them extending their time and the benefit to us as someone that's hiring them? Are they going to do essentially more work for less money?
They're going to do basically the whole compensation classification, job description review, organization structure review, for the 49,250. So.
Councilman Danforth?
I think it is critical that we have the data for use within the budget cycle. Is it possible that the most critical work as it relates to the budget could be done earlier, dot your I's, cross your T's with some of the other stuff after the fact, so that you have truly got your wage information to apply to your budget? Is that a possibility? And then the support detail or some of the other stuff comes in behind it?
McGrath provided an actual each step that would come forward, and it looks like they are having the development of the classification and salary system right around that same 4-month time frame if we timed it out. So they had, like I said, they pushed it about three months longer, but then that's to cover some of their it looks like the job descriptions, the organization structure, like that. So I would say both are going to be similar within that 4 month to get the
budget,
classification and salary system to us.
So a question I do have, did the information that you have, is it based on a paper proposal, or did you actually do interviews with these people?
We did not do actual interviews with the people. We looked at both the proposals, and what we did is we contacted their references, and then some of, I know Audra too has some contacts with some of the South Dakota municipalities. So it was a lot more of us just calling the references. And like I said, it was, even though some were references, we heard the good and the bad. So, I mean, so that was nice that it wasn't all that, oh, everything was great. We did get to hear some of the not so great too, so.
Well, I'd just like to make a comment then, and I want to kind of go with Don. If I'm having heart surgery, I want somebody that's got all the experience that they can. With this, I like the notion of the fresh eyes. I do like the fact that they've got to come in with a whiteboard that's completely bare, and they've got to do all their homework with current data. So I'm inclined to go with McGrath myself.
Councilman Albertson? Oh, sorry, Don.
I was looking at what they could do with Condre, and were we looking for somebody that could develop job descriptions and organize and staff review? Is that something that's critical for us, or is that something that's already done, or?
Mayor, I would just comment that might be deceiving. The dashes should probably say included and under McGrath.
Yeah, it's in there.
all included.
It's included.
Okay.
Councilman Roby?
So you're looking for input. I haven't heard anything that distinguished the two greatly. And if that's the case, then I'll default to where do we spend the dollars, the taxpayers' dollars.
Yeah. Councilman Y?
So just to be clear, so the public's clear, both companies are offering exactly the same thing. We'd get the same report. Just because there's a dash in there doesn't mean that we don't get that report. So bottom line is it just comes down to the dollar amount. You're still getting the same report.
Correct. Councilman Vilhar?
Kristen or Mayor, whoever, are both of these companies where are they located? I mean, there'll be some travel time and cost involved. I mean, is there a big difference?
No, McGrath is out of Illinois and Condre's out of Georgia. So, but a lot of what they propose to is, I think both only have one on-site. A lot of it is done through surveys, and then there's one on-site visit, I think.
Okay.
So there's not any real difference there.
Councilman Lallam?
Mayor, I'd make the motion that we recommend McGrath for that.
Do we have a motion? Is there a second? Second motion from Lallam, second from Albertson. Any further discussion? Councilman Y?
Just one more thing, Kristen, to be clear, I would imagine there's probably not a lot of these companies in the United States, so there's no local company or anything like that.
No, and that's the thing with how we went out for RFPs. I mean, that's what's nice is we put it in local. We also did contact a couple other municipalities that had done RFPs in the past. We got some of their contacts and directly sent out emails like, here's our ad. So, I mean, I feel as though we did our job in advertising that we were going out for proposals. And like I said, we received 4 back, and these were the top 2 that we felt we wanted to dive into. So with that, if there is the motion, just to kind of clarify then, the next step will be then that we will have Matt review the actual agreement that would be put in place, and then that would come back to the next council, just so you are aware of the next step. So.
Anyone else? Okay, just for clarification, this is a wage study and a classification review. We're hiring a company to come in, look at all of our job descriptions, make sure they match what the employees are doing, and setting their salaries to be current with the job market. And I know that both of these consultants, whichever one we would hire, would ask us if we want to be right in the middle of the pack, or if we want to be just barely tagging along with the market value, or if we want to be the highest paying organization out there so that we get the best cream of the crop. So that'll be up to us. That won't be up to the consultant. Either one of them would work with us. And when we're all said and done, we should have a more fair and marketable wage classification system for employees. So that being said, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying nay. I think, Beth, maybe it was disconnected. So the motion carries. Item
Aye.
number, that was
Did
a
you get
really,
me?
really long delay. Beth, did you vote? That will take another 20 seconds. Okay, moving on. Item number 13 is approval of resolution number 19-18 for a wage adjustment for the engineer to urban planner position in the city engineering department. And we have a resolution.
Yes, I did, and I said yes.
Great, thank you, Beth. I'll look for a motion and second for approval. Moved by Vilhauer. Is there a second? Second by Lallam. And I would like Heath to please explain what we're talking about here.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. This is a timely discussion on the heels of the last action that the council just took, and I would just echo a few of my comments related to the city engineering office and how valuable I believe this study will be, and particularly for the engineering office. And I think that in my experience here, we are not just drawing from a South Dakota pool to fill and retain the positions in the engineering office. I myself have a prime example of that, drawing me back to South Dakota, albeit, but coming from Wyoming back to South Dakota. Also, along those lines are the Engineer 1 position that we're currently trying to fill, and realizing that the draw for that position is not that great, and needing to expand our advertising out into further reaches and consider wages and compensation that's more comparable to a regional effect is critical. That falls in line with the discussion here as item 13 in relation to our urban planner position. And in assessing the positions in the city engineering office and the workforce demands that we have, I wanted to bring this item forward to the council for consideration to do a salary adjustment for our urban planner position. Albeit it is on in advance of the salary study, but what I can also reassure the council is that I've done a large amount of research on this particular position, the wages that this position typically gets paid, not only throughout South Dakota but throughout the region and neighboring states, and am very confident and comfortable in making the recommendation that's in this resolution. One of the main reasons for this is in a timely effort to want to retain qualified staff that we have on hand in a time that the engineering office is in need of this staff to carry out the daily duties that we have before us. Based on the recent engineering contract that we executed here at the last council meeting, we know that we're a little bit pressed as far as the workload goes right now in the engineering office, and I feel that this is a critical step in retaining the current staff that we have in this particular position. And I'd be glad to help discuss any further questions that the council or mayor might have.
Does anyone have any questions? Not seeing any. All right. I agree with everything Heath said. And I'll look for a motion or action. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is old business, and I would like to bring up the policy in the city's personnel policy manual, which was just updated less than 6 months ago, I think at the end of December. There's a city employee that is moving and would like to remain an employee, but she's moving more than 35 miles away, and so she resigned. And I just don't like that in this day and age when it's extraordinarily difficult to attract people. We hurt ourselves by making that limitation of 35 miles. If someone chooses to live 45 miles away and they have a longer commute, why do we care? Why would we want to make that, cut our marketplace short for employees? If we have someone who's willing to drive that far, I don't think we should argue. And so I just kind of wanted to get a feel from the council. I know there was some thought that by having someone live within 35 miles of Watertown, you would get someone who's more invested in Watertown and therefore would be a better employee and would be less likely to call in that they can't come because the roads are bad or whatever. And I think we would leave alone the employees that have to be first responders. And I've got the residency requirement up here. I'm trying to see the critical services or standby employees are required to live within 15 miles. And I'm not saying that we change that, but I think that we should not limit the distance from which employees live in order to be employed in the city of Watertown. And I'm just wondering, if I brought this up as a change, would there be opposition? Does anybody agree or disagree with me? Councilman Lallam?
I guess the only issue I would have is, like you said, if it's an essential employee, fire, police, which they have a different radius. Maybe the only concern I would have would be potentially a department head, where they're in charge of a certain amount of people. That's where I could see that there could be an issue. But it would have to depend on what it is as well. I mean, if they're in charge, say our street department, and we're having a major snow event or flooding like we had this past week, that's where I could see that as a potential issue. But, depending on what the job is, I don't see an issue with it at all.
All right, and I would think that's a performance problem. If you've got an employee that isn't able to be there when you need them, then, that's grounds for termination. And if they're telling you when you're offering them the job that they will report to work and then they don't, that's a breach of a contract and a reason to discontinue that employee. And that's not what we're talking about here. If someone's willing to make that commitment to come to work every day, I know this is done lots of other places where people will drive 60, 90 miles to live where they want to live and work where they want to work. And I don't think we should make that limitation. Anyone else? Okay, I probably will bring forward then. I called this old business because we just recently change the personnel manual, but I'm going to bring a change to the personnel manual forward for action soon. I'm happy to see there isn't a lot of push against that. So thank you for that. Another piece of old business is that today happens to be Councilman Vilhauer's birthday. Happy birthday, and thanks for I'm assuming those pretzels came from you.
I take no credit for those.
Was it your wife?
My wife gets all the credit.
Yes, yes. So this is a long council meeting, and he kept us all full with tasty treats, so thank you for that. Is there any other old business, Councilman Albertson?
Same old record for me. Where are we on the, we went out for a study for the ice rinks. Has there been anything back on them?
I haven't signed it yet, but I think it is here and ready for me to sign. Is that true?
Yes, it is, and the consultant's been in contact. Last week, of course, pushed things off a little bit with the transferring of that contract and signatures with our flood-related duties that we were 100% of our time was put towards. But the consultant is ready to go, and there's a timeline now associated with that contract, and I believe a May 3rd completion date, if I remember off the top of my head. So a little over 30 days to wrap up that segment of the work under that contract.
Thank you. Councilman Lallam?
If we're staying on the old business, did hear on the radio today that it is Scott McMahon's 25th anniversary of working at the police department today.
Holy cow.
So he's not here. Tim, you should have made him come. But it's his 25th anniversary today.
Wow.
So
that's
shout out
pretty
to that.
amazing.
Yeah.
Councilman Danforth?
Yeah, I have one question in it, but I do want to comment. I had the opportunity to work at the city's sandbagging operation for a couple of days, and what an awesome turnout in regards to the number of people that showed up. It was, under a tough situation, you try to have fun, and for the most part, we did have fun. But interestingly, there was a lady from Millbank that came down to help. And there was also, I think the second day, the Waverly South Shore High School sent about 14 or 15 kids down. That was really, really neat to see that, so it's not just our own residents, it's people from outside our community that have come in to help too. Had a lot of fun, a lot of hard work by a lot of people, so I want to thank all those people. But one question I do have is now that, even though we appear to be over the hump right now, we're very susceptible to flooding should we get some bad weather. How long, I'm getting asked the questions of what has now been put in place. How long will that remain in place? I'm assuming for a while anyway, till we know that.
Yes.
Even, any type of incident, it would hopefully be past us. So if you could.
Right. We had a point of contact. An engineer with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers came to Watertown and helped us through this whole flooding process. And he was our liaison between the Corps people that do the modeling and the National Weather Service and all the other various organizations. And he's requesting, or has requested already, that that be answered for us. Like, what kind of precipitation event would it take to send us back into the danger zone? And he had a name for it. I don't remember what it was, but it had an acronym. But they'll get that for us and do the modeling, and they're still watching over us. It isn't like everybody just checked out. We'll get that.
I'd just like to say that you mentioned the Corps of Engineers. They brought that sandbagging device, whatever it is, machine, which was awesome. It worked incredibly. It's the second time it was used. They just bought it, went to Sioux Falls, came up here. The two gentlemen that were here, and I can't remember their names, not Tom, the
Larry
engineer.
and Dave.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Larry and Larry, right? Those guys were absolutely awesome to work with.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't there just to have the equipment running. They were pitching in. They were hauling bags. They were great. It was a lot of fun to see them work at the level they were versus just coming in and making us work.
Right.
So I want to thank them as well.
Right. And I want to say this. I came for my conference call Saturday morning at 9:30, dressed to go to the wellness center and expected to have a half-hour phone conference call and then go about my day. And when I got the news that their modeling was showing the potential for record flooding in Watertown, and did we want their assistance? And I said yes. And literally within hours, 3 engineers were in my office from the U.S. Corps of Engineers. The sandbagging machine was on its way up here, and they were already here behind us, helping us. It was amazing, and the support was fantastic. And the incident command team, by the way, we suspected flooding might be an issue, and so the command team was assembled well in advance. Wasn't it January or so, Don, when we started talking about flooding because we had so much snow? So everybody in that incident command team, which is made up of dozens of people from the engineering department, the fire department, the police department, the sheriff department, the emergency management department for the county, the state. I mean, there are people from all over with specific jobs on the incident command team, and they were ready to go. They already knew what their role would be, and Saturday when the incident command team was called to action, it was just immediate. My office was packed, standing room only. People were getting things lined up. They knew what their job was. It was a thing to behold to watch that, and I'm really proud to be part of this community and to have been part of that team. It was such good cooperation and a team effort. It's just really great. It's awesome to live in Watertown, I tell you what. It's like nowhere else. So thanks for everybody that helped with that. Is there any other old business? How about new business? Any new business? Councilman Vilhauer?
I've got one item, and maybe it's because of where I live. We had a meeting in your office here a few weeks ago with the individuals that are in charge of the litter blitz, which came out of the H2020 group. They're going to need help again, and I tell you what, as the snow disappears, all of a sudden you're seeing all the litter that's been left behind the last 4 or 5 months. And I guess I'm asking for when that pitch is made, groups out there, individuals, et cetera, we've got dozens, if not hundreds of those sort of groups around town. Take a couple hours to volunteer. It'll be explained how they can get signed up for a spot. And likewise, as people are out walking, walking themselves, walking a dog, whatever, take a garbage bag along, and don't be afraid to pick up garbage along the way, because I tell you what, that means so much, or makes such an improvement in a community if we take the time to pick up what's accumulated now in the way of garbage the last few months.
Great, thank you for that. It's true. Any other new business? Councilman Lallam?
Let the street department know about potholes. They know they're filling them as fast as they can, but I've seen them out and about. So they're going right from flood preparations to pothole filling. So
right.
Let them know if you find them, big ones.
Yes,
Give 'em a
and currently they're doing temporary pothole patching because the asphalt plant isn't open, but it's still important. You don't want to throw your car out by driving in one. And so we need to know where they are. Don't be shy about reporting that. 882-6207 is the street department. Other new business? Any liaison reports? None? Okay. We do have a need to go into executive session pursuant to SDCL 1-25-2 to discuss contractual matters and pending litigation with our legal counsel, and so I'll look for a motion and second to go into executive session. Moved by Lallam, second by Y. Oh, there will be no action when we come out. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries.